Walking lightly, we're all walking lightly. Let this moment last, could be gone so fast. Walking lightly, we're all walking lightly. We're all walking lightly. Let this moment last, could be gone so fast. Keep walking lightly. We're all walking lightly. We're all walking lightly. Let this moment last, be gone so fast. Walking lightly. Let's go to the chorus. We're all walking lightly. We're all walking lightly. We're all. Let's go to the final chorus. We're all walking lightly. We're all walking lightly. We're all walking lightly. We're all.
Nice to see you this morning. My name's Chris. And Zach and I have some music here that I want to start sharing with you. This first one was, it was one that I wrote for us together a couple years ago when we had a Christmassy theme called For Such a Time as This. And Greg named some of that last week in our talk about the story of Esther being put in that place for such a time as this. And that's kind of what this is just sitting with and saying, let's be here today, now, in this space, just as we are. This is what we got. We're going to make the most of it. So I think you'll catch on to the chorus a little bit. Feel free to sing along. And you don't have to be afraid. You were made for such a day, for such a time, for such a time. Don't have to be afraid. If you do, there is no shame. For such a time as this, hold out your heart. Steals your breath, somehow all you know. For such a time, this is all there is. For such a time, all there is. This song is called Every Breaking Wave, about some of what we find ourselves chasing. So I'd let yourself just be here. Don't worry about chasing anything right now. Every breaking wave on the shore, till's the next one, there'll be one more. Every sailor knows that to lose is what you're really there for. This summer I was fearlessness. Now I speak into an answer phone. Like every falling leaf on the shore breeze, winter wouldn't leave it alone, alone. If you go, the street knows that we're in love with defeat. Are we ready to be swept off our feet and stop chasing every breaking wave? Every sailor knows that the sea is a friend made enemy. Every shipwrecked soul knows what it is, with or without intimacy. I thought I heard the captain's voice. It's hard to listen while you preach. Like every broken wave on the shore, this is as far as I can reach. If you go your way and I'll go mine. Are we so helpless against the tide? Baby, every dog on the street knows that we're in love with defeat. Every breaking wave knows where all the rocks are drowning his nose. Said, you know the place that yours has been. We know that we fear to win, and so we end before we begin. Before we begin. We sing it together. We go. If you go.
Our groups during the week. But one way that we showed up for each other this weekend, we had an event a few of us ran in Women Run the Cities. And we had cheerleaders from Fabric also encouraging us. And we ran in honor of Anne Scotland. It's an event that really just aligns with who she was, and the course actually goes past where she was living last. So it's a really meaningful event. So it was our second year, and we hope to do it annually. So you can think about next May if you want to be a part of it in some capacity. To orient to our space here, we have coffee and tea, bathrooms down the hall. There's a gender-neutral bathroom if you follow the signs in the teacher's lounge. Hopefully you got a Sunday paper when you came in. It tells about events going on and coming up. Like tonight, there is the Second Mile event that's at the Artist Lofts in St. Paul, the old Schmidt Brewery. It's a really cool space. We're kind of helping with the incoming search team and celebrating the transition team. Anyone is welcome. I think you should let Katie know if you're going to be there tonight. Also, the communication card was along with your Sunday paper. We do ask that you fill this out each week so we know you are here. Any prayer concerns or requests, information can go on here. And I think that is it. I encourage you to do some earthing today if you can get your feet in the grass for a few minutes. But we will do a centering practice here with our feet on the ground here. And if you want to close your eyes and put your hand on your heart and your stomach, and we'll take 3 deep breaths together just to bring our minds and our bodies here in this space. And one more. All right, and Greg, it looks like we have some food here that I think you're going to tell us about.
Yeah. Ooh. Hi, I guess I'm here. Yeah, I just wanted to say a word, too, about the Second Mile event, too. We are going to thank the transition team and welcome the search team, but what we're really going to be doing, the purpose of the event is just to be thinking about and think, well, so while this transition is going on, what are all of us going to be doing? Because there's some really important stuff. And we want to get everybody's heads and hearts around this. And so if you can be there at all, please do come. And the information, I think, is on the Sunday paper. And ask us questions. But that's it. So, yeah, for the last 5 weeks, we have been talking about this dangerous book, which I don't have here, but I'll go get it later. The Bible, right? And one of the things that we've been talking about with that is we've been looking at these big thank you. Ask and you shall receive. Scary. Been looking at these big arcs, the red threads that run throughout the whole book that tell us what these broad themes are, that help us know what to do with all the smaller, themes, the stories, the writings that are on there. And one of the big themes that runs through this Bible is food. And that really shouldn't be surprising, right? Because food is what relationships are about. And if the Bible really is about anything, if there's going to be one big arc, it's relationships. And so food is so important in helping us start relationships. So, that's kind of an important thing to do. So we're going to have some food today and some drink. And we're going to be exploring later on in the gathering a couple of stories that all are also about food and drink. And they lead to another story which is really central to what the Bible is about, and which is a meal that Jesus shared with his inner circle that they could continue to share and remember him and remember what they had to do with it. Now, the church that grew out of this thing that Jesus started has called that communion or the Eucharist or the Lord's Supper, but the name really doesn't matter. I mean, what really matters is that when people come together to gather around a table and to be fed, there is something going on there. That is a sacred moment for those people, and there is something really important happening there. Psalm 34, in speaking about the wonder of being in relationship with God, being in relationship with Yahweh, says, taste and see that the Lord is good. And in Isaiah, Isaiah speaks for I am who I am, Yahweh, which is the name that he knew God by. And he writes this, he says, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you that have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread and labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good and delight yourselves in sumptuous food. Now, it isn't about the food, right? Right? At least not specifically. It's about the tangibleness of love. It's, not just thinking about it, it's not even doing it, it's experiencing it. And that's what all of this is about. And that's what we want to be about today. So we have some tables scattered throughout the room here, like this one. And on them are some artisan loaves of bread, courtesy of Turtle Bread, which we've had a relationship with for many, many years. Thank you, Turtle Bread. And there is some wine, red. It's a very fine vintage. I smelled the little red cardboard circle myself. And the white is apple juice, if anybody wants it. And I think there's some gluten-free options. Gluten-free option is apricots. Okay, on all these. So want to invite you to come and to share these meals with each other. I'll push this one out over here. Go there and don't just take some and go back to your seat. Share with each other, right? Serve each other. Don't serve yourself. Share each other, and then talk. I mean, if you need to start with the weather, that's okay. But ask after each other and really listen to each other. Maybe you're going to find some things that will end up on your communication card afterwards. That can be a good way for us to be community together. If you're on the live stream, go find something to eat and drink and maybe send a text off or a quick call to someone that you've been thinking about who's on your heart. That's a good thing to do. So let's enjoy this way of how we are pulled together to enjoy and to grow from this sacred moment that we can have. After a couple of minutes, the band's going to come up and start some stuff, and then we're going to dive into taking a big bite out of this big book again. Okay? So enjoy.
ahead and make your way back to the seats. We're going to sing this next one together. It's about trust. Sun, come down on me now. Warm this cold, cold heart of mine. Troubles come and troubles go. May I see light through tired eyes. I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. Can you sing that? I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. Give me grace, give me peace through my pain and suffering. Be a constant fire that draws me higher. Burn up the despair that's been sinking me. Burn up the despair that's been sinking me. Burn up the despair that's been sinking me. I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. I will lift up my eyes to the sky, to the sky. Be a constant fire that draws me high. Burn up the despair that's been sinking me. Sing that, would you? Burn up the despair that's been sinking me. Burn up the despair that's been sinking me.
Yeah. Whoa. And welcome, Zach, back from college. Yeah. Well, we'll take him back, won't we? Yeah. Pull this out here a little bit. So, yeah, I'm Greg Meyer. Good morning and welcome. There is an outline on the back of the Sunday paper this week, and just to compensate for only having one fill-in last week. Yeah. Okay, need I say more? So we have been talking about these twin dangers of this book. And our goal in doing that, and this is on your outline, is to give you some tools, to give you some practice, and hopefully to give you some inspiration around this book so that it can actually be an asset, something valuable to your life. I want this book to be dangerous to you, all right? Not dangerous in the bad way, dangerous in the way, where it gets used as an agenda or to create fears that, and all those things get layered on top of it so that we can use it to hurt or, to keep other people in their place, to divide people, but rather so that it can endanger the things in you and around you that limit who you are and what you could be part of. So that's the kind of danger that we want to do. And I think when we let that kind of danger get at us, then we can be part of making this world a better place and be part of the corrective that helps fix some of the damage that this book can be used improperly for, can be abused for. Now, week 1 gave us some clues about how to deal with some of the obstacles of time and of language and of culture that are in this book. So if you didn't hear that, or if you just need a refresher, go back and listen to that podcast. That was the April 16th, so go do that. But so here's one of the deals. To be a part of this positive danger of this book, it means you need to have a pretty good grasp of this book, a pretty good deep grasp of the overall picture of it. And I know that's not easy. For some of you, it's probably even a deal breaker. So I don't know how to do that. I can't be there. It'd be nice if you could just leave this on the shelf and pull it out when the time is needed and you've got to have that special Bible verse or something. But that's not how it works, In my group this last week, one of the things I said to them is, and this is on your outlines, the Bible is going to serve you best when it is a foundation to your life, not a Band-Aid, okay? And I'm afraid that often gets treated like a Band-Aid, right? I need a Bible verse, I need something, and that we hear that. I don't know if you do that, but I think that's one of the impressions we get from society. Looking for that perfect verse to solve your dilemma of the day really falls easily prey to that problem of what I would call literalistic reading or even of magical thinking that doesn't take the gap seriously of that time and language and culture present us with when we try to deal with this book. And it's much better to have a general feel of the book, get a sense of it, an understanding of what's in here, so that that general sense that is inside you can steer you towards those particular places that you maybe need at a particular time, right? That's more like a deeply woven, deeply connected relationship with this book. It helps you use it in a way that is responsible rather than expecting it to be a quick fix for you sometime when you've got a problem. Now, how do you get that deep bedrock understanding of this book? That foundational grasp of it, especially if you weren't raised with it, or if you were raised with it in a way that was really an unhealthy way of dealing with it. I probably just have 2 suggestions on that. One is gradually, you get that grasp gradually, and you don't do it alone, right? You don't do it alone. Now, hopefully you get a good dose of kind of the big stuff that's going on here, those overarching and some of the ways of dealing with some of the problems in the book from what you hear here. We try to do that, I and all the rest of the speakers, but I have to say that that is one of our goals. It isn't our only goal, not even necessarily the main goal of what we do when we're speaking on Sunday mornings, because there's a lot of things in life, that this book speaks to, but just quoting the Bible doesn't help it, right? There's more ways. Jesus didn't hardly ever quote the Bible when he talked. Well, it didn't exist yet, but that's beside the point, right? It is an important goal for us, but it isn't the only thing to do. And you know what? You can read this on your own. Surprise, surprise. We will continue to, throughout these Rome challenges, read, observe, apply, meditate, a great little rhythm of how you can deal with stuff. It's on the bottom of your Sunday paper this week. We'll continue to throw those out. But you also need people to process this with. Now, our fabric groups are there for you. They're specifically designed to help you do that with this book, and as well as with a lot of other things in life and a lot of the other things we talk about. But the point of that is to find people that you can share ideas, you can share questions, you can learn from, you can hear what inspires them or feels important to them, what stretches them, and you can do the same for them and begin to explore it that way. I mean, that's a really healthy way to approach all this. The point is, do it with others, not just on your own. So maybe you can hear in what I just said, these three arenas that Fabric works really hard to develop, all being present there. There's a role when we are all together, right? Hearing some of these stories, getting inspired, getting ideas about them, and then having a smaller group of people where you have these significant relationships where you can start, figuring it out for yourself, where you can be part of the conversation. You can add your own ideas and learn from each other. And then there's a role that you have by yourself, your own personal spiritual habits that are going to support what we're doing together. All of those three arenas, those three bowls, we often talk about them as work together and need to work together. Now, I mentioned already before our meal that one of the tools is to let the whole interpret the part, not the part interpret the whole, right? That is, what are these big themes in the Bible that continually come up, those arcs, those red threads, and how do we use them to better understand the individual and the particular stories and writings and things that happen to be in there? Now, that tangible, touchable shape of love as we experience it in beauty and food and hospitality and other places, that is one of them, right? And the meal that you just shared was an experience of that, which the Bible wants us to experience things, not just think about them, right? So I want to look now at another one of those themes, one of those big themes with you today. And this theme, which runs throughout the Bible, speaks to the limitations that we put on ourselves, telling us more about what we can't do than what we can do, okay? I think they line up well with what we talked about earlier as well. Now, I want to focus on two stories from Jesus' life that you likely already know, and you probably have even heard me talk about them before if you've been around here long enough. And we repeat some of these key ideas because they're key ideas, right? All right, so they're important to revisit every once in a while and to remember that those are legs of the table that we need to stand on. So the first is a story that's only found in John's gospel. There are 4 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. A gospel is a book in the Bible that's about the life of Jesus. And John is the 4th one. It was the one that was written last among all of them. And unlike last story, which came from the very end of Jesus' life, this one comes from the very beginning of his career. So John tells us 7 miracles that Jesus performed. He's got 7 of them in his gospel. Now, that 7 is an auspicious number, right? It's 3 plus 4 is 7. One of these details that you want to pay attention to in the Bible. 3 being the divine number, the number of God in Hebrew thinking. 4 being the number of the earth, right? So 3 plus 4 is 7. That and the fact that most of the miracles that John talks about don't show up in the other Gospels gives you a pretty good clue that these are more than just miracles. In fact, John calls these miracles, and they're better understood as signs. He calls them signs. What is a sign? A sign is a message, right? I mean, a sign along the road isn't important. It's not about the sign, right? The sign is telling you that there is something where you are or where you're going that you need to know about, right? Okay, and that's what these 7 are. Now, this story that I'm going to read to you is the very first of these signs. Is it a coincidence that it's the first one? Yeah. Or is there something important about it? Does it have some primacy among the 7 miracles, the 7 signs that he talks about so that he puts it first? Well, frankly, we don't know. But considering just how symbolic John makes everything in this, I think you probably need to know that there is some certain status. There's a reason why this isn't just like one out of a random group of 7 that happened to come up first. And likewise, maybe the importance of the message that it carries doesn't just happen to be the first message out of a couple of messages that he wants to share with us, right? So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. So this is a reading from Rome. Read, observe, apply, meditate. That is in your homework for this week. You can spend some time working through it yourself later, but I want to read it to you now, okay? This is John chapter 2. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Interesting. Wonder why she's telling him that. And Jesus says to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." Which sounds both like a combination of there's something big going on here and being kind of sassy to your mom, right? Yeah, heavy sassy. And I love his mother's response to that. His mother says to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." It's neat to know that even if you're the son of God, your mom can still like boss you around, you know. No hope for the rest of us. Okay, so now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. And Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. Then he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." End of story. Except a little epilogue here. Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, I'm not particularly interested in what Jesus did in the story. I'm really interested in what he didn't do. This is kind of the quintessential Jesus miracle, right? Turning water into wine. It's, either walk on water, turning water into wine. It's what everybody talks about. In fact, I saw this meme on social media the other day. I found $20 in a parking lot, and I thought to myself, what would Jesus do? So I turned it into wine. You may have to think about it for a minute. Okay. You have to realize that this is kind of a wow. Like, Jesus turned water into wine. Sure, it is a wow, but that's what he did. What didn't he do? That's what I want to look at. I'll be brief. He didn't do anything. He told the waiters, the stewards at the party, that they should fill the jars with water. Do the math, by the way. 6 jars, 20 to 30 gallons, that's 120 to 180 gallons of wine. Then he told them to take some out and give it to the chief steward. That's it. He didn't touch it. He didn't wave a magic wand over it. He didn't say a prayer. As far as we know, he didn't even look at it. They, the people, the stewards of the feast, they did everything. So let's recap. On their own, they ran out. And on their own, what they did have wasn't as good as it could be. But when they included Jesus, when they included the third strand, Jesus did not take over. No, it was still their party. It was still their wine. But Jesus was now part of the experience with them. And when Jesus was part of it with them, it was far more and better than all they could ever ask or imagine. Now, John the writer ends by saying that this was the first of his signs, right? Signs. So what is a sign? What is the message? That Jesus could do something that nobody else could do? Or that Jesus, that Yahweh, that God believes in us and what we can do and the role that we can play? And knowing that when we weave our lives with the third strand, rather than trying to go it alone, our limits can be blown wide open. another story. That was a drinking story. Let's try an eating one, okay? Another you probably know, the feeding of the 5,000. This story had to be pretty core to what Jesus' life was all about because the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it is told 6 times in those 4 stories, in those 4 books, in one form or another, okay? Let me read it first. This is from Matthew chapter 14. Now, when Jesus heard that John the Baptist had been killed, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, and he cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They don't need to go away. You give them something to eat." And they replied, "Oh, we have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, "Well, bring them to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down in the grass. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up into heaven, he blessed and he broke the loaves, and he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and children. Now, there is a lot going on in that story that we do not have time today to chase down. But I want to focus on something that parallels what the story from the wedding feast is all about. And that is what Jesus didn't do and what that says about our limits. So, you get the picture, right? Jesus and his disciples are somewhere out in the countryside, far from town. People from all over the surrounding area have walked to be there with Jesus, to hear him, to see him. And as the day wears on, there's a problem emerging, right? What are these people going to do? I mean, it's dinner time, and there's no food anywhere to feed everybody. This crowd could turn into a mob in no time. That would not be real good, right? Okay, so the disciples, Jesus' inner circle, they turn to Jesus. That's good, right? They turn to Jesus, but not to include him. They don't turn to him to include them. They turn to him to unload their dilemma on him. They want him to solve their problem. They want Jesus to be the solution. They just thought that's what they needed to do. And Jesus would have nothing with it. He would not have it. No, because he knew that they were the solution. They just couldn't see it. So Jesus tells them, the crowd doesn't need to go anywhere. You feed them. And they are thinking, well, that's preposterous. I mean, we can't do it. We have nothing. We got a couple of loaves of bread, a couple of fish, and that's it. And by the way, the details again, did you catch the number? 5 loaves, 2 fish. Easy math, right? 7, all right? Means pay attention. In fact, that's kind of code telling you that, guess what? That's going to be enough food, right? First century storytelling. Got to remember that. So Jesus says, okay, bring what you got here. Let's do this together. And Jesus does what they should, what they could have done. He looks up to heaven. I mean, meaning he includes God, includes Yahweh. He knows that this isn't something that we do on our own. And then he breaks it. He blesses it. He basically gives thanks for the little they have, which never seems to be enough. Nonetheless, it is worth giving thanks for. And, that's what he does. And so then he takes that and he hands it back to his disciples and he says, okay, now hand it out to everybody. Now, I'm just imagining the disciples like looking back and forth at each other saying, like, seriously? I mean, that's great, Jesus. I mean, we can do that, but this is not going to work. I mean, this little bit of food that you told us to hand out to everybody, it's going to be gone before it goes through a couple dozen people. And there are thousands of people out there. I mean, but you know the story. The food doesn't run out. Not in the story. It keeps going and going and going. And at the end, they gather up the leftovers, and there's how many baskets left? 12. There's that number again. 3, the divine number, times 4, the number of the world. Everything, right? 12 baskets full. 12, the number of the tribes of Israel. There is enough to feed all the people of God. And just think, well, what happens to those 12 baskets? I mean, that's a question you're supposed to ask from a story like this. I suppose each one goes to feed another crowd, right? And then they pick up the leftovers, and there are 12 baskets from each of those. Now we got 144, and it just keeps on going. Now, just in case you're getting sidetracked, this story is not about how to feed a crowd, okay? Got it? Good, thank you. Don't want us going down that road, right? Now, you shared in that exact same banquet about 20 minutes ago. 2,000 years, and the meal still continues. The feast continues, not because Jesus or because God did some magic trick, a miracle. No, it was a sign, right? The cargo, not the vehicle. The cargo is the message. It's the sign, which is what? A sign that the limits that we assume are keeping us from doing great things are greatly unfounded. More is possible when we don't just stand by and wait for God to take over and to do it for us, but we realize that it is our role to weave our lives with God. More is possible. When we weave our lives with the 3 strands of our true selves and the people, the world around us, and God, when we share a vision and when we work together, more than you could ever ask or imagine is possible. Now, alternatively, a way that this story and all of these miracle stories are ever understood is shock and awe. Wow, look what Jesus did. He fed 5,000 people, plus women and children, with 5 loaves and 2 fish. That is amazing. I'd better believe in Jesus. The problem with that is that meaning is only there if that event actually happened the way it is told that it happened. And, well, one thing, stories from the first century didn't work that way. That's not the kind of questions they were asking. And second, I've been saying this from long before I ever started Fabric. When you ask the wrong question, I don't care how good your answer is, it's going to be unhelpful. And asking whether it actually happened that way or not is not the right question. It isn't the question that they want us to ask. So, if it has to be true for this story to have meaning, then you either have to believe it actually happened or you didn't. And since there is no way to possibly prove it, all we've got are some words that were written here 2,000 years ago to say, well, it says so. So some people will believe and some people won't, and you will argue forever and never be able to convince someone else. And while you're doing that arguing the whole time, you will have missed the point. And the point is that God believes in you more than you believe in yourself. And God also wants to be with us, included you and me. And God wants us to be with each other. As loners, each of us can do some great things, but we can never do enough, especially not for the needs of our big world and our complicated lives. But together, as part of the fabric of the universe, you have no idea what can be accomplished. And that is a message that the world, that you, that I need to hear. There are a lot of messages in this book that the world and you and I need to hear. In life, like life, it takes effort, it takes practice to get the stuff that matters out of it, but it's good. Deep down in our soul, kind of good when we bother to do it. set your pens down and just shake out those rumblings and take a breath. It's funny to think that you believe in us, that we matter to the universe. We aren't just people that hopefully aren't messing things up, but we actually are part of all the good. We thank you that this world is something that we can touch and taste and love and enjoy and share with each other, and that when we do that, it doesn't run out. It just keeps on going with more leftovers than we ever started. We think about those places where the limits seem to be so strong in our own lives. We look at the newspapers. We think about some of the situations our friends or ourselves or families are in, where we feel so stuck, we feel like we've hit the ceiling. Remind us that we are never alone, and that what we can do when we wrap our arms around each other can be far more than we would ever ask or imagine. May it ever be so. Amen.
All right. Well, if you would, please, go ahead and find those white baskets in the aisles, and you can pass those with, you can put your communication cards in there, and if you have brought gifts to support the community, you're welcome to put those in there as well. And if you're new around here, just know that we don't expect that of you. That's it's just you being here is more than enough for us. I want to sing this. This is just nice, easy walking tune, and so you can, as you are moving around, we can stand up and sing this together. This is just open to warm us up before the kids come back and we can really party. All right, so this is called Walking Lightly. Encourage you to just sway a little bit, or let yourself kind of mark time with your feet, move your body. We're all walking lightly. We're all walking lightly. Let this moment last, could be gone so fast. Keep walking lightly. Walking lightly, let this moment last, could be gone so fast. Keep walking lightly. moment lasts could be gone so fast. Keep walking lightly. Roll, walking lightly. We'll roll, walking lightly. We'll roll. Sing it again. Roll, walking lightly. Roll, walking lightly. Let this moment last. Could be gone so fast. Keep walking lightly. Roll, walking lightly. Roll, walking lightly.
Have a seat. We're waiting for the kids to come back from Mars. It's a long ways. I think they're actually beyond. So, Chris says, can't get rid of this guy soon enough. And actually the whole beyond thing is really fitting into where we want to go next, and we're going to be talking about Let's Go Beyond starting next week as well. And did you know that starting the last day of school, which is like June, whatever, that this room, there's going to be construction going on. So we're going to be here for the first 2 Sundays in June, and then we'll be out at the falls the rest of the summer, which is going to be kind of cool. Anyway, but yeah, so I do want to remind you tonight, join us if at all possible. It's going to be fun. It's going to be important tonight at the Old Schmidt Brewery at the Artist Lofts. And there's a lot of talk about believing in God, right? And how we are supposed to believe in God, which I really don't think God, if you want to talk about God that way, wants us to believe in God at all. I think God doesn't care if we believe in God or not. What God wants us to do is to trust. Can you trust what I show you? Can you trust yourself to weave your life with mine? And the interesting thing is what I was talking about earlier is that the funny thing is that God believes in us. I mean, that's kind of what the question is, that do you believe that God believes in you? And there's a lot of different ways of believing in ourselves or understanding how we believe in each other. I want you to see this little clip from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's really short.
He's coming.
The music can make him sleep.
When he wants. He's too powerful. I can't.
You will have to believe in yourself. Because I believe in you. I never thought you'd be able to do it.
I thought, Mars and beyond, plus I never thought you'd be able to do it. I mean, that's what a lot of our believing is, but let's really believe in each other, okay? That's good. There's homework. It's on the bottom of there. It's these Rome readings you can take on. But astronauts, and come and share something with us here.